When I was 27, I sat in my doctor's office. He said, "You'll never be able to have a baby. You know, you are infertile." I had periods twice a month till I was 17. I never had them again. He said, "You won't be able to have children. You must accept it. You can't conceive, and you'll never be able to carry a child because of all these weird hormones in your womb." And even at 27, I said, "I'm going to stop you right there because I'm not letting that in. I don't actually want to hear that." And I had the foresight, I was already a therapist, to understand that I was not going to let those words in. Do many of you know that in certain countries now they've banned surgeons from saying when people are in surgery, "Oh my God, you know, this leg is mashed potato and this guy's never going to walk again," or "this cancer's everywhere, they're going to die." In a lot of countries, including New Zealand, you are not allowed to say anything negative while someone is in surgery because the subconscious picks it up and believes it. And so they either say nothing or they say very positive stuff. And there's a great guy called Maxwell Maltz who, even in the 60s, I think he took 40 people with damaged knees and he operated on 3 of them. And on the other 27, they made incisions when they didn't do any surgery at all. And they told all of them it was amazing. And all of them said that their knees would dramatically improve. But only 3 of them actually had the surgery. The others just had a little incision, a bit of a stitch. And they believed they were completely cured. Because belief is such a powerful thing. So I knew I was not going to even hear that. So I stopped him and I left. And I always knew I'd have a baby. I did think it would be very hard and it might take me a year. In fact, I actually got pregnant immediately. So now I'm pregnant and I'm like, wow. And they said, "Oh yeah, but you know, the pregnancy's not going to go to full term. You won't be able to carry this baby. And even if you do, she's going to have the same illness you have." In fact, they diagnosed with an illness that I never even had. They found out later I didn't even have this illness. But they said to me, "Your baby's going to have the same," it was a thyroid thing, "you're going to have the same illness and you probably won't carry it to full term. She'll probably spontaneously terminate." In fact, they didn't say she, it was it. And I had to turn up and have all these injections and all this stuff for an illness I turned out I never had. And then they said to me, "Well, your baby's only ever going to weigh about 3.5 pounds, so you know we're going to have to deliver." In fact, when I gave birth to her, she weighed 7.5 pounds, and she was perfect. And I knew then, wow, don't listen to what doctors tell you. So, got my little baby, and I'm doing a thing for the BBC on how to give birth under hypnosis. I'm very motivated, very invested in having my baby under hypnosis. And so I've woken up one day, all through my pregnancy, and they kept saying, "You're going to lose the baby." I'd put my hands on my tummy and say to her, "You're perfect and you're growing." And there's a site called Viz Embryo. And if any of you are working with women to have a perfect pregnancy, you just send them to that site because every week it shows you what the baby is doing in the womb. And you say, "Oh, this week your little fingers and toes are growing and your spinal cord is fusing and your heart's doing this." And it's amazing. I'd worked with a client who'd had 2 pregnancies, and each time at 6 months the baby would not suck the amniotic fluid, and then the lungs don't develop, and then she miscarried. And on the 3rd session she came to me and we just talked to the baby in the womb and said, "Suck the amniotic." We commanded it, instructed it, and it worked. I worked with somebody once who rang me the day before Christmas Eve to say that her baby it was late and her doctor was going away on Christmas Eve, and therefore she was going to have to be induced. She said, "I don't want to be induced. Could you hypnotise me to go into labour?" I'm like, "Sure, come in right now." So in she came, lay on the couch, and we talked to the baby and we told it, we said, "Engage, you know, you want to have a lovely, beautiful birth. We don't want you to have all these inductions." So we told the baby, and in front of my eyes, the baby's head moved into the birth canal. She kind of waddled out there, went to the hospital and had her baby that night, and her doctor went on holiday the next day, and she went home and she went, "I feel like I went and bought that from a shop because I just turned up, had it, and went home." And I felt like that. I went to hospital quite late. I went to sleep, and at the last minute I opened my eyes and I pushed out my baby and had all this film crew there, and it was really cool. And then I had her at about 8 o'clock at night, and I went back to the ward, and it was like, wow, she was perfect and a miracle. And the next day, I woke up with my little baby, and the nurse was going around giving people boxes of Kleenex. I'm like, "What's that?" They went, "It's for the antenatal and postnatal depression." Everyone gets that. I'm like, "Really?" They went, "Oh yes, on day 3, the ward is a sea of weeping and wailing, and it's okay because it's the hormones. You know, you've had all these hormones with the afterbirth, and now you've got no afterbirth, no baby. So your body is going to miss the hormones, and everyone has postnatal depression. I'm like, do you know what? I actually haven't signed up for that. I'm going to have postnatal euphoria. In fact, I'm having it right now. And I don't really want to have postnatal depression, but I do want to have postnatal euphoria. And now you've told me this ward is a sea of weeping and wailing. I think I'll go home. I get enough of that at work. I don't really need to have that on my first day of being a mother. So I got my little baby, and I got a taxi, and I went home. And I didn't actually realize that I'd given my keys to my baby. We weren't really together, but he'd come to see her being born. It was all lovely. And I said, I'll go back to my house, because I'd bought all these little dresses, because I was sure I was having a girl. But I said, bring me all these little dresses and things, because I've got just what I want, a little girl. And of course, he brought me the dresses, but forgot to give him my keys back. And I didn't realize. So I've got to my house, and I can't get in. I thought, well, it doesn't matter. I got my car keys. My mum would love to see the baby. So I put my little baby in the car seat, and I drove to Cambridge. And of course, you have to have a maternity nurse coming every day. And so I had to ring Cambridge and go, well, I'm not in London, I'm here. They went, okay, we'll send you a maternity nurse. No, not a maternity, I'm so sorry, a midwife. A midwife comes every day for 10 days. You will know that, don't you, for babies, and they have to come. So I'm at my mother's that night. I've left the hospital that morning. I'm at my mother's. And the next day, because my baby was born in July, I put her in a pushchair and I took her for a walk. And I came back to my mother's house just as the midwife turned up, and she went, oh, why are you out? I'm like, because it's a beautiful day. And I take my baby, and she was, oh, no, there's lots of germs out there, and you really need to stay in bed for a whole week. You should be in bed, and she should be in bed. I'm like, but I'm not ill. No, but her immune system. And I said, what about people in Africa and India that give birth in fields? I mean, they don't go to bed for a week. What about people who've got 5 kids? My friend in Scotland's got 4. She didn't even go to bed for half an hour. She just had them and carried on living her very great hippie life. It's one of the best parents I've ever met. No, you must go to bed for a whole week with your baby. Go to bed now. And I was just about to move my car, because my mother lives in this place where you can't really park on the street. And she went, oh, did you drive here? I'm like, yes. And she went, have you never heard of pregnancy brain? I'm like, no, but I'm sure you're going to tell me what it is. She goes, well, when you've had a baby, you can't concentrate and you can't focus. You can't even think straight. I can't believe you've driven for an hour and a half on a motorway with pregnancy brain. I'm like, well, luckily, I didn't actually know what that was. And when I was having her, I'd gone to the clinic before the birth with your birth plan. And they said, how are you having your baby? I said, hypnosis. They went, are you mad? Do you know that giving birth is like sitting on the hob with the gas ring switched on? It is agony, it burns. I'm like, well, how do people do it in Africa? They went, oh, they've got different shaped pelvises to you. That's why they have bigger bottoms. Like, well, what about in India then? They don't have big pelvises. But I'm only telling that story because of what they told me was available to me. The agony of sitting on a gas stove, that was apparently how you gave birth. Postnatal depression, pregnancy brain, and that was after they told me I couldn't have a baby in the first place. And then I remember thinking, I'm not going to listen to any of this. And that's when I wrote my book, Trying to Get Pregnant and Succeeding, because I realized that whole negativity of like saying, oh, you can't possibly have a baby at 35, when women have had babies at 40, for hundreds and hundreds. When those pioneers going on the wagon train across America had 18 kids, when did they think they started? At 12. When Irish women had 18 babies, and believe me, they weren't having them at 15 because it's a Catholic country. They got married at maybe 17, had a baby every 18 months in horrendous surroundings. In fact, Elizabeth Barrett Browning, the very famous poet, got pregnant in 1820 at age 44, having had tuberculosis for 11 years. And it's just a myth. So you're going to have a lot of myths. And it's very important to look at what it's about. I'll tell you one more story and then we'll move on. So I'm doing all this work on pregnancy, and I found these studies that say adopted daughters have exactly the same periods as their mother. If the mother watches and goes, oh my God, I've got my period, the cramping, the agony I need to take to my bed for a week, adopted girls tend to have exactly the same period. And the mothers who go, I'm off to play tennis now, I've got my period, but who cares, I'm not going to cancel my tennis game, have different periods. In the same way that mothers like Goldie Hawn, who age really well, will have daughters who age really well. And the ones who go, oh, when you get to 50, it's all downhill, and the forgetfulness and the grey hair, will have daughters who age very differently, and sons too. So we know in Japan, when people are doing Tai Chi on the street at 85, people age very differently to here, where they sit in the chair and surf the TV and go, oh, my knees ache, and I can't remember anything, and my eyesight. So you become what you believe.